This interview is being tape recorded. My name is Paul Maliri, and this is X Job Downloaded. And today I'm going to interview John Bateman. Now, John is a former member of Hertfordshire Police, but he's now, I think, the chair of the IPI.
Not the chair, I'm one of the board members.
One of the board members of the IPI. And what does the IPI stand for? What does that mean?
Institute of Professional Investigators. There's often some confusion that it's private investigators. It's not. It's Institute of Professional Investigators, and that's quite an important difference to make.
And I mean, we'll go through your life story because you were a navigator and then you joined Hertfordshire Police. But how did you come to being part of the IPI?
Right, so a guy called Brendan Tolan, who's sadly passed away some years back now, God rest his soul. I'd known him for a long, long time. He was ex-City of London and fraud squad and crime squad and stuff. So when Brendan left and he was doing private investigation work, he said, JB, do you fancy jumping on the board? I didn't think it was me, you know. I'm quite a strong character, but just didn't foresee me in a board position. So it was quite a nice bit of ice to break in that sense, that having got on it, and I realised that, yeah, I could contribute. And it was, I was a member of the Institute from early 2000s. So yeah, it seemed a natural sort of jump across, really.
Oh, you served your time in Hertfordshire Police and you were a detective there, but how do you feel that has assisted you in making the transition into being a professional investigator in the private world?
What, the IPI?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it gives you that credence. It gives you that reassurance, or gives the reassurance to the clients you're dealing with somebody who is endorsed and qualified. So yeah, I think it's an important thing, obviously, and I'm sure we'll touch on it later during the chat, that we're all desperate for it to be licensed, because it's just we'll touch on that later. But yeah, to get us licensed, but it's got to be part of being in one of the organisations, and from there.
Okay. Well,
but the board was interesting because I've moved into a different field of people sitting around the table talking about things, and the frustration I get with people say, yeah, I'll do that, and then they don't, and I hate that in life. If you're going to put your hand in the air and say, yeah, I'll do that particular item, and then they don't, that's really annoying.
But don't you think that is in the private world? I think that happens more than it did when I was certainly in the police. If I said to somebody, right, I need a volunteer to go and do such and such, then they'd go and do it. Or if I needed something done, right, I'm going to be back at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, can you make sure that report's on my desk? That would be done. But in the private world, if you say to someone, oh, can you do this? Yeah, okay, I'll get round to it. I mean, payments are the worst one, isn't it? It's getting paid by a client and cash flow, but I think every business goes through that at some point.
They do, and you're touching on another pet hate there, and I know we're dancing a little bit off subject. The old, I can't pay you because I haven't been paid. What's that got to do with the money you owe me?
Absolutely, and if we get instructed, then you or I get instructed, you do expect payment. I've only been knocked twice. One bloke went completely bankrupt, and the other one went to a different country. But it will never happen again.
Yeah, but, it's funny. I'm on a very similar line. One went bankrupt, or two. In fact, it was two. There was a solicitors went under as well on us, which was rather frustrating and unusual.
Yeah, no, that is. But where did it all begin for you, and how did you get into being the police? How did you get into joining the police?
Well, if we can come back to the IPI at some stage, because
we will do.
I want to plug that a little bit. But from my personal perspective, I left school and I got a job as a printer in the lithographic. It'd be a term that wouldn't even be used in the modern day. Lithographic. You had a barrel, and there was a metal plate on the barrel that you designed, which had the artwork on it for you to print off, and literally the barrel went round, which in the old days would have been with a handle, but it was electric. Go round, print your items, come out. So I was a lithographic printer, which the little term of my life learning how to be a printer was quite exciting. But then I sort of stumbled across joining the Navy. But so just to answer your question, which was what happened when I joined the old Bill, was my old man was a cop. He was an inspector, Tony Bateman. So he was literally retiring, and I kind of stumbled into a little bit, and in that sense, well, I fell into the idea. I thought it was a good idea. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And I said we're losing sort of some of the sequence of it all, the chronological of it all, but the Merchant Navy had sort of run its course for me. So I fancied something different, and that was right. And Dad was leaving. In fact, I got his collar number. I got his shoulder number.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, his was 105, and I took over 105. So that was quite proud. And yeah.
I bet. I'm going to take you back. So you go through your schooling and you get to 15 and a half or whatever. You've done your few exams, whatever exams you've done. Why the Merchant Navy? You're not from a coastal resort, or you know, what made you join the Merch?
No history at all. But of the family, no one had done the Navy before. But I'll tell you how I stumbled across it. Do you remember when you were at school? There was because they didn't have dedicated. There was a careers officer.
Yeah.
Or careers teacher. Yeah. And he had a bit of 2 hats on, and I think this guy had 3 hats on because I'm sure he was the sports teacher. And I went in there to do my careers, you know, how you're getting on, where you're going, you've done your A-levels, blah, blah, blah. And I didn't know what to do. He said, have you thought of the Merchant Navy? And I absolutely hadn't. He said, well, why don't you go to one of those open days where you walk round and talk to each shipping company?
Yeah.
Well, I'll give it a go. It sounds interesting. I'd got good qualifications in maths, and physics, which is what you need. And I'll explain that in a second. But yeah, So have you ever thought about the Merchant Navy? And then I went to one of these open days and went round the things and applied to a company called Reardon Smith and Sons, and put the application in, and they accepted me. And I kind of like whisked off my feet a little bit because I was suddenly I just literally remember being at this open day, walking around, filling in the form. Next, I was at the induction. And the funny part I always felt with the induction course was it was 2 weeks. 2 weeks, that's all you had. And that wasn't on a ship. That was 2 weeks on land. And next thing, you're on the ship. All you really know from your 2 weeks was that pointy bit at the front was the front bit, and the blunt bit at the back was the back bit, the stern. So it was, and that I was eyes wide open on my first ship. 80,000 ton bulk carrier. It was like over 100 meters long. You imagine a ship that's over 100 meters, more than you'd run your sports day on. And the thing that I had to get used to was when we got into heavy seas, if you got into really heavy seas, you'd see the ship flex. The actual ship was that long.
Wow.
It was designed to, it would flex in the sea, and you'd watch it flex. It was unbelievable. The power of the sea could bend or flex an 80,000 ton ship.
But you see, we forget, don't we? When it's windy outside, we look at the trees and think, "God, that's bloody windy."
Yeah.
But there's sailors that are out in that weather, aren't you? Know, in the you can't sail away from a hurricane. You know, you're literally going to be stuck in the eye of a storm, which could be life-threatening.
Well, I joined my first ship 17, literally 17. I'm sure I was still spotty at the time, but certainly a young man. And the ship, you know, it was mind-blowingly large. It was mind-blowingly big. Everything was huge on it. And one of the things I did do, literally, I joined in Tilbury.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And you don't get many shipping ports now that take that size ship. I joined the first ship, 80,000 ton, what they call a Panamax. And Panamax means it was narrow enough, or Panamax suggests it was the maximum width you could have, or beam. I can use the nautical term, maximum beam to fit through the Panama canals.
Right.
And literally the first joined until we went to Hamburg and loaded in Hamburg, and then we went down and we crossed the equator. Now, in nautical terms, when you cross the equator, and if it's the first time you've ever crossed the equator, you have to pay penance to Neptune.
Right.
Yeah. So there I am, 17, didn't know the front and the back of the ship, so on, and I had to cross the line, and it was a crossing the line ceremony, which I won't go into all the boring detail of, but it wasn't particularly pleasant. You ended up in a swimming pool eventually after all the other things, and they chased you. And the people that chased you, you got a bit of hide and seek on the ship. Like you couldn't really not be found on the ship, but hide and seek. And it was 2 people dressed up as police officers.
No.
Yeah. if you look up the crossing the line ceremony, it features Neptune, the king, his wife, and then it was usually a bloke that was dressed up as a woman with coconuts shells. And you had to be hunted down on the ship, found, and paid your penance, which wasn't very nice, and then chucked into the thing. But it was blokes dressed as policemen had to find you, which was rather ironic.
How funny is that? But you're talking of a time where computers were probably in their infancy. There was no GPS in the way that we know of GPS. I suppose they worked off beacons, did they? I don't know how would that work then.
Right. So there was 2 or 3 methods of navigating at that point, which would have been 1977.
Right.
So I was 18 on my very first ship. Was it my first ship? Yeah, I turned 18 on my first ship, and I crossed the line on my first ship, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable to go through those 2 things, massive things in your life. And so there was 2 ways of getting around. Well, 2 or 3 ways of getting around. You did the original sextant and stars and sun sights to fix your position, which is an art in itself, which is why you had to have the maths and the physics qualifications. You had what they called RF, radio frequency, which would give you points of reference. And you had a radar, so if you went close enough to the coast, you could pick your route down the coast by hitting various lighthouses and saying, right, I'm level with that lighthouse on the port side, so I must be at this point of my journey getting down to South Africa. So that was your journey. And otherwise, there was no fixes. It was maps and charts and sun sites.
Yeah. How brilliant is that? I mean, I assume that the modern navigator would have to know that as well now. I mean, I suppose they just plug it in.
I hope they do. I hope they do. Star sites, moon sites, sun sites are the most beautiful piece of technology from the 1700s or whenever they invented the sextant. That I'd be really sad if that's now gone and that the modern day navigator cannot work a sextant. I'd be really sad. I don't know the answer.
Because I would imagine that if all modern comms drop out, they've still got to get the vessel from point A to point B.
Yeah, defo. But see, okay, so I'll tell you a funny story. So we eventually got satellite navigators on the ship, and they came a huge, great, massive, great like TV set plonked on the chart desk, and you switched it on and stuff, and it could only pick up your position when it went past the satellite, because there was only about 10 satellites in the sky, where there's now 10 million or 10,000 or wherever many there are. So you'd only get your position when you passed the satellite, and the accuracy was within 2 miles. 2 miles. You imagine now we're down to whatever the accuracy is now. So you'd only get a fix once a day if you were lucky, but it was 2 miles. So we didn't use that as a navigating aid other than give you a rough idea that you were roughly in the right place, going in roughly the right direction.
And how many countries did you get to in your time?
Oh, right, you can't see it, but there's a map of the world up on my wall to my left on my port. And I've got push pins in every place I went to.
Really?
And I must have 40 push pins.
Wow.
Right, some of them same country, especially the States. Didn't see much of South America, rather strangely. Really weird. I never got down to South America. And yet one of the shipping companies that we managed was Transporte Maritime de Mexicana, which was a Mexican shipping company. But of course, that's in Central America, I know. But yeah, we never got down. I never got down to the south. But Central America is brilliant. Mexico, beautiful.
And what year did you finish in the merchant?
So 17 to 23. So I did 6 years in the Merchant Navy and literally virtually went straight out Merchant Navy, and then foolishly decided to join the old Bill.
Oh, so I mean, 1982 was pivotal for the Merchant Navy because they went with the Royal Navy down to the Falkland Islands.
Yeah.
What was your inspiration to leave the Merchant Navy and join the Civvy Police?
Well, inspiration was probably Dad, in fairness. I don't think you could argue it much further than that. He was the only person who I knew in the old Bill, so it wasn't as if somebody else had mentored me to that position. You know, he'd done it for 30 years and got to inspector and thoroughly enjoyed it. And he was police. As you know, it's a vocation. It's not a job. You have to be all in, don't you? If you haven't got all your cards in, you can't really do it. So yeah, Dad, I suppose, would be the true story.
And was he in he was in Hertfordshire as well?
Yeah,
So
Hertfordshire.
he took his collar number.
Yeah, he passed away 2014, and he had his ashes chucked in the Solent at Portsmouth, which I only found out that is like they're going out like 5 a day chucking ashes out. Apparently, it's like that's the way to go. So many people want to get their ashes chucked over in the Solent.
Was he a Royal Navy man then? Was that his?
He was Royal Navy. He did his service. What was it called? Service.
National Service.
Thank you. Yeah, National Service, and he boxed and did all those things. He was very moulded by his Royal Navy days, which he'd stayed in love with. And of course, when he decided to pop his clogs, that's where he said he wanted to go, which is rather odd because you can't visit them. You know, there's no ashes to go and see where they were scattered, other than bobbing around on the sea and no grave and all that stuff.
You can stand there and reflect, can't you? And it's something that, you know, we've just gone past the Remembrance Weekend, and you know we all have to make time for that, don't we?
Yeah.
When you join Hertfordshire Police, you've been living in a bunk on some massive container ship. I mean, that must have been quite daunting in itself. I know you said earlier on that if the cargo moved, you could feel it on the vessel. Oh,
good Lord, yeah. No, we were cargo ships.
Yeah.
No, we didn't do any containers. We were all cargo, what they call general cargo. And from a navigator's officer's perspective, that was I'm trying to compare it. That was, if you want to compare it, as the CID yeah, because it was what, you know, it was, you had to think, and you don't have to as a uniform man. I'm not trying to decry anything, but it's what everyone strived for, was for the general cargo, because you saw more places, you stayed in port longer. There's so many more advantages to general cargo, to bulk cargo, to oil, to containers. I mean, containers are turning around in 24 hours. You don't see where you went. We broke down in Mobile, Alabama. We were 2 weeks just sat there doing nothing because we were broken down.
Wow.
I know. So you saw so much more of the world. I don't know what that had any value. That was a general cargo ship, the Josepha. But yeah, and you saw so much more of the world because you were in port so much longer. Cape Town and Durban and Melbourne, Australia, and Adelaide, and all these places. Fantastic.
How cool is that?
Yeah.
So you joined the police, and you've hung up your sou'wester and your.
Yeah, that's it. I've still got it all. I've still got it.
Have you?
Got it. Yeah, I've got my hat. My Merchant Navy hat's up the top, my cap. Yeah, all the uniform. Because it was the days where you had to be in uniform. Like now, they're probably pretty laid back. They probably just go around in boiler suits all the time. But we had to have, you know, and you couldn't go in the officers' mess to eat unless you had your uniform on.
Really?
Yeah. They were proper organised things. There was no shortcuts. If you wanted to go certain places on the ship, you had to have your gear on. And if you were in your boiler suit, you could only go in the smoko room. So it was, and it was nice. There were nice things. Your shoes were polished. Your clothes were pressed. Your hat was all prim and proper. So it's to be proud of. And to be fair, the police started off very much the way. It was the days when I did my training at Ashford. It was, marching.
Yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely. Did you do the marching?
Yeah, I went to Ashford 3 years after you. So I went in 86. I went December 86.
Yeah.
We did the marching, we did the running, we did everything, you know. It was full on, and I absolutely loved it. I was 21 at the time. Yeah. But you've gone from traveling the world, living in a bunk somewhere on a ship, got a berth there, to you're now a landlubber. You're
That's it.
How did that transition happen? How did you feel about making those changes?
Well, do you know what? I was already a man then, so I was very proud. I did my manship in my 6 years in the Navy, right? So when I then joined the police, where they tried to start all over again, treat you like a baby at sometimes, I got a little bit frustrated because I'd already been steering a £10 million ship about. I mean, that 10 million ship had been now worth 100 million. Do you know what I mean? So I'd already been steering the bloody thing, you know? So I was very, very grown up, 23-year-old, 24-year-old. I was no kid anymore. So, and I had quite strong views and ideas and thoughts because I was a man. And that's how I saw myself. So that was a little bit difficult in the sense that I wasn't a boy. But you were a boy from your service perspective. You only had 1 year in or two, you were still a boy. You're still a probationer, weren't you?
Yeah,
But I
absolutely.
wasn't a boy from a perspective of life. You know, I'd seen so much more than most of those others that were at that age.
Yeah, absolutely right. So you've done your training at Ashford. Where did you go to when you?
St Albans.
Oh, did you?
Lovely, lovely, lovely. Proper town, probably original town. Do you remember the old foot patrols used to have our own call sign?
Yeah.
Did you do foot patrols with a call
Yeah,
sign?
yeah.
Yeah, so with, you know, your Foxtrot, I can still remember the call sign, unbelievably, Foxtrot 101. So that you're doing foot patrol right in the town centre or the city centre, because it's a city. And it was proper patrol the town centre. You were seen, you were there. Market days, and walking up and down with all the market stalls, talking to all the market holders. Lovely.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been better.
Policing, proper community policing. Yeah, I was Charlie Foxtrot 81. That was signed when I was out in Braintree, or
That's
8
it.
if I was the other one. But yeah, it was.
Those memories stay with you. I mean, I've just plucked Foxtrot 101 out of my head, but I'm sure I'm right. I'm sure that was what it was.
Yeah.
You when you're reminiscing about it, you do suddenly remember all those things. And I still remember my very first day as a uniformed police officer. Can't remember Steve's surname now. Probationary officer, probationary constable that was training you and teaching you. Steve somebody, I can't remember his surname. I've insulted him now. Yeah, and literally we started at 6 a.m. first shift, early turn, and within, but it was 6:30, 7:15. Oh yeah, can you go to sudden death?
Yeah.
And I hadn't seen a dead person. Simple as.
No.
So my very first job there, stumbling through this poor old boy's house, brown bread on the floor, was sudden death.
Yeah. So, I hadn't seen a dead body until I joined the police.
Did Essex do that if you had got the dead body, you'd been to the deceased and such, but then you went to the post-mortem?
Post-mortem, yeah.
There you go. So there you go. First day, sudden death. You best go and get yourself a bit of breakfast, because you're going to do the post-mortem at 10 o'clock.
I still remember the house that I went to where the lady had died.
Yes, me too.
I could take you there now, and yeah, I remember going to the old mortuary in Chelmsford, the old hospital in Chelmsford. When I was a kid and I worked on a building site, we had an Irish guy fall off a scaffold, had a heart attack, fell off a scaffold, and he was dead. I didn't realise he was dead, and they bundled him up, put him in the back of the van, drove him to A&E, and he was dead when he got there. But I'd never seen a dead body. I mean, I've seen it since, but yeah, it was quite I'm sure. I mean, look, I'm sure they still go to sudden death. They might not attend every crime, but they've still got to go to sudden death, haven't they?
I hope so. But there was always a big difference. So I thought there was always a big difference between the sudden death, you know, been dead many hours or days or even weeks, God forbid, to the one that's just happened. You know, the as you said, fell off a roof or something. That fresh. That's all right. It's not a very nice word, I know, but that's just it's just happened. Dead is a lot different.
It is, and you've got to placate often family members. You know, away in the house or work colleagues. I think they all went down the pub afterwards, but yeah, it is a lot different to somebody that, you know, we haven't seen them for a few weeks, and it's July and it's the hottest day of the year. You can't get those memories out of your head. But so how long were you in uniform for?
Well, I must have done, I don't know, I must have done 4 or 5 as uniform, and then I was very keen to get on CID, so eventually got there. And you do the aids. Do you remember doing the aids?
Yeah.
CID aids. And the people, I don't know how many people listen to your pods, might not know what an aid is, but yeah, it did me aid. And then what was the Maidstone was the CID course, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I was Birmingham, but Maidstone was one of them.
Yeah. And then that was, I mean, anybody that went on their CID course knew it was one big piss up, to be honest with you, if you're allowed to say that.
You can 10 weeks. 10 weeks of it as well.
That's it. 10 weeks. Yeah. Full on.
Come back skin.
Yeah.
Honestly, it was horrendous. I went to Birmingham. It was horrendous.
But going back to being in the Merchant Navy, of course, I was a very rich man, because joining the ship, I didn't pay a thing, not a thing. And So all my food was free. I would say I didn't pay a thing. If you wanted a drink, you have to pay for a drink. But how much do you reckon a shot of rum was on a ship?
Oh, I dread to think. I would say it's probably about 50p a shot, something like that back then.
2p.
2p.
2 for a shot. So you could have a double rum, that's 4p. Can of Coke, that's 10p. double rum and Coke, 14p. And you didn't even give them cash. You wrote a little chitty, right? A little chitty out. John Bateman, double rum and Coke, 14p. And at the end of the month, the chief steward would add up all what you'd spent in the bar until you owed him £2.84. It was, and as you said, we just save. We came home and lived like kings.
I think that some merch boys still earn good money. I mean, that you can see why they're attracted to the lifestyle.
Yeah, they do.
But it's tough family, isn't it?
Oh, crumbs, yeah. No, I wouldn't. I don't think I could have done it as a married man. I think you're in a different world. 6 months on, 3 months off. No, that's not fair on wife and family, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So you go on to CID in Hertfordshire. Where did you go to after Maidstone?
I did. I was St Albans uniform, Harpenden uniform, St Albans Aid. I think I did St Albans office after my course, but then I went to Watford.
Oh, okay.
Which was very busy, as you can imagine. A big, busy city. That.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've got the football ground there. Watford football was the only. I don't think they were in Div 1. Well, they might have been because Elton John and things, but certainly the football was a busy night there, or busy day there.
So this is 1987, 88 time?
Yeah, I've got no concept of many years. Only real years, as I said, is joining the Navy. After that, I lose time. Yeah. But
what sort of stuff would you deal with on the CID in Hertfordshire?
Well, yeah, whole range. I know we're talking to people who perhaps haven't done it, but yeah, the whole range, whatever came in. And it was the old days where you'd have someone ring the CID office and say, I've got a fraud, and you take it on from there. It wouldn't be filtered out. No. It would literally, the call would come through to the switchboard and say, can we have CID, please? And they'd put through CID. So we got jobs direct.
And it worked.
No filter. Well, I thought it did. And you had a book there of who's rung in to speak to so and so, is DC so and so on duty. No. I'll leave a message in the message book for you. So that all worked as well. But yeah, if you picked up the phone in the office, you've got to expect to either take a message or take a job. Simple as. If you were the duty table or desk, it was your group 1, group 2, group 3, group 4, and that rotated, didn't it? As you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's how we used to work. If the phone rang and you picked it up, it could be from a fraud to a bigamy or whatever.
Yeah. It could be the old it's a murder or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And everybody was rubbing their hands together for the overtime.
Well, yeah. How did you work your murders over there? Because we used to have a pool. You get called in to support a murder. We didn't have major investigation teams when I first.
No, it was the local bobbies. Plus, you don't decimate the whole of the Watford office. You take basically some of that group and some of this group, and then the rest of it said filled by people from other nicks.
Yeah.
Because I was on the Patrick Hurling murder in Hertford, and that sort of drifted a lot into Essex because that was Nazing and all sorts of that stuff, because he was an accountant at Waltham Abbey.
Right.
And Waltham Abbey might then have been yours.
Essex. Oh, that was Met. That went to we took it from the Met in 2000 when they did the boundary changes.
Yeah, right.
So did they get the person responsible for that murder?
Pat Hurling murder, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, it's a long time ago, and a long time I've been out of the job too long to know all the ips and buts of it. But as far as I'm concerned, still undetected.
Wow.
There's not many of them.
No, there's not.
Not especially with the cold case reviews and stuff.
Yeah, and I mean they'll wheel out the exhibits and they'll do another ESDA test or another DNA test or whatever it may be. The problem is, as these things go back further in time, the the witnesses that are available become
That's
fewer.
it. That's right.
But they are interesting.
And they set his house on fire, so with the body in. So a lot of what would have been there was utterly destroyed, either by the fire itself or by the fire brigade, smashing windows and getting in there. So whoever did want him finished did quite a good forensic destruction job as well.
So we don't know the motive, though.
I won't go through that on this platform. So not the time and place, I think they say.
No, that's fine. That's fine, mate. Did you work on other major investigations?
I was on the murder of, his name's going to go see. Tell I'm 64. Come back to that. No, there was a story with this. Might remind us. I'll go back to the Patrick Hurling murder. The Patrick Hurling murder. Patrick Hurling was living in the house that used to be owned by Keith Birkinshaw. Keith Birkinshaw was the ex-Tottenham manager.
Yeah.
And I'm a Tottenham fan, so there was that little connection. So Keith Birkinshaw sold it to Patrick Hurling, and it was a bungalow in Bengio. And unfortunately, that's where he was turned over. But the traveller that was over in Watford was dumped in a lay-by in Chorley Wood. Oh, can you forget a job that you're on? It's daft, isn't it? And that one would struggle to get detected for a long, long time, because a lot of the travellers were sort of, a bit like the black on black. They kept quite stum and didn't really want to
Close ranks.
Name names. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed working with the traveller community, to be fair, because
yeah, me too.
I always found, they were an interesting bunch to work with.
Well, if you got close to them, they were brilliant. And there was a twist to the name of this guy that got murdered. Was a guy called Ivan Dunn. I've now remembered his name at last. And his sister was Lila Dunn. And then Lila Dunn, somewhere along the way, was related to Bobby Frankham, the boxer.
Oh, yeah.
And Bobby Frankham was the boxer who punched the ref. Do you remember?
Yeah.
You can still Google that. You can still Google that and get the footage of him punching the ref.
Yeah.
Of which he got banned for quite some time. And every time I went to see Lila Dunn, Bobby would always come over, see what we were up to. They always want to know what's happening, don't they?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, it's a bit of a catching. Don't want to be a sweeping statement, but they know what's going on. Because if you drive on their plot, they want to know what's going on, and understandably so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, very protective. Yeah, so yeah, we met Bobby Frankham many, many, many times.
What year did you turn it all in?
I got diagnosed with multiple sclerosis.
Right.
1992.
Wow, 32 years ago.
Yeah. And the neurologist, when he had diagnosed me, said 1 in 10 people get in a wheelchair. So I hung on to that as a hope. I'm not in a wheelchair, I still walk. So I'm very, very lucky after 32 years. Because you start off, multiple sclerosis has got quite a few sort of zones, if that's the right word. And you can have quite a mild version of MS and can have that all your life.
Yeah.
Or you can have the start of MS, and usually it's what they call relapsing remitting.
Right.
So you'll have a relapse and then you'll recover, but it's like a ping pong ball. So you bounce the ping pong ball, it never quite bounces back up to the same height. So you'd be 100%, just say you went with your first relapse at 100%. When you have that, after that first relapse, you're down to 98. Well, when you're on 98%, you don't really notice the difference. But when you have a relapse, when you're down on 32% or whatever percent you're at in your body, if that's a good term. I always think of my body as a phone battery.
Right.
Yeah, it runs out very quickly.
Yeah, no, that's a good way of looking at it, though. It's certainly with the new Garmin watches and what have you, that's exactly what they do. They tell you that your body battery is at a certain point.
Yeah.
How did you discover that you had multiple sclerosis, though?
And funny enough, I was on a prison visit down in Sussex. We got rammed up the backside by a big lorry, crunched all the back of the CID car in, and obviously had all the whiplash and stuff, and went in, did the normal sort of best go check it all out sort of stuff, and when I went then back for some checkups, I complained of pins and needles in my legs and stuff. They said, well, you shouldn't really be getting those, and they went on and on and on. 2 years Took them 2 years
Oh.
to find and be confident enough to say you've got multiple sclerosis.
And how did the job respond to your diagnosis?
Didn't tell them.
Didn't you?
No, didn't tell them for a long time. In fact, I was talking to another guy called Keith Crowder about it. I sort of blurted it out. Well, he blurted out first. He said, "I've got leukemia, John. I haven't got long to live." And I sort of thought, "Geez."
Wow.
And I don't know why. I just felt obliged to say, "Well, I've actually got multiple sclerosis," because I didn't know when multiple sclerosis was going to go. So I told him about the MS. He told me about leukemia, and we just had a beer and cried at the pub.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because you're still a young man. But I mean, so that was 32. So I went all the way to 45, still playing cricket and golf and sort of enjoying my life. It only really after 45 started impacting me, and I've got sort of this. Remember the Homo sapien bit where the blokes walking and standing further and further taller up? Do you remember? Can you remember? Yeah. This poster, wasn't it, with the Homo sapien going from an ape to the Homo sapien that walks up and walks.
That's right. Yeah.
My mine was the reverse of that, because I started off as this big, tall man, fit, playing a good standard of cricket, and blah blah blah. And of course, my MS then take me down to this sort of reduction of a man. So I always think of that poster. It's kind of weird. I know it's quite a weird comparison. I know.
No, but I understand. It's the Benjamin Button sort of effect, isn't it? You're doing it you started off one way and finishing in another.
Yeah, it's beating you up, and it's one of those ones where it's not life threatening, but it's quality of life threatening. It just keeps taking away a bit of your life. Somebody said to me once, it's a permanent bereavement, but it just chips away another part of your body bit by bit. So each time you lose that bit of your body you had before, you have to do the bereavement stages to accept that doesn't work any longer, that whatever that might be. And my MS is all below the waist. So I've got all those problems, is legs, and that, well, basically legs, to be quite frank. So that's where you're at. Whereas my upper body and my dexterity in my hands, and this deal to the nose and stuff, is all works and stuff. It's weird. And I've obviously hopefully still got a decent brain, although I tend to forget a few things occasionally, but I think that's because I'm 64 rather than the MS.
Well, yeah, and I think that as we accumulate so much knowledge along the way, it's a library where we never get rid of any of the books.
No.
And so the shelves get fuller and fuller and fuller, and you can't remember every chapter in every book, and that's how it works. No. What year did you pack up with the police?
94, I think.
Right.
So long ago, really. I mean, bear in mind, that's pushing.
That's 30
odd years ago. Yeah.
Oh, so
yeah, and I kind of shut the door on it a little bit. So I parked it, and I sort of kind of like, well, that's done. I'm done with it. I need to move on and do something else with my life. But stay well was my goal. And I got very fortunate. I've stayed well, although got the relapses. That I sort of generally stayed well until about 45, and then it really sort of gave me some grief. But the guy I bumped in reasonably soon after was a guy called Roger Pritchard, who I knew from my CID days, and he'd had a heart attack, God bless him, and job was very quick to cast you then, weren't they, if you had problems. So he'd been cast, and he was very, I don't want to speak for him, he certainly was disappointed about it, and he set up a detective agency, which there was none then, virtually. Now there's flooded, but he set up a detective agency and a lot of work. And of course, the other thing that a lot of ex-cops did is they immediately went into the security of a particular company, didn't they?
Yeah.
So Roger had this wonderful network of ex-cops that were all running company security. So when there was a security-related issue, they called on Roger to help out, as well as the head of security for that particular company. So he had a lot of work, and I mean a lot of work on at the time, even though it wasn't, there weren't many detective agencies. He had a lot of work on. And he asked me if I could come and help him, which I did. And I combined with trying to stay well, it really took off. Oh. We set up another company because we had that sort of volume. Well, I had my company, he had his, and then we had a third one between us. So we were very, very busy in the 90s and 2000s.
And at what point did you get involved with the IPI?
2000 and well, no, okay. I reckon I joined the DIPI 2001, something like that. The IPI was set up in 1976, and I joined it in about 2000, 2001, and then I got on the board in 2017.
So who's on the board for the IPI then?
Right, so the chairman's Richard Cummins, he's ex-City of London. Glenn Evans is the secretary, who's ex-Essex, and you know well.
Yes.
Brian Collins is up in Manchester. I don't know all of Brian's police career, but he's also ex-military. A guy called Di Cooper, who's up ex-Humberside, as I understand it, and Nicole Benorthan, who runs her own detective agency, and she keeps us a bit straight, so it's not all just a bit of an old pals act as ex-cops. She keeps us straight, not allowed to swear and stuff like that. But yeah, no, it really is going well. We're very successful. We're doing really well. There's a guy called Lord Byron, who's in the House of Commons, who's ex-cop. He's helps us out a lot on the sort of higher end of stuff. We've become the training sort of arm of one of the sort of organisations, which we're very proud. We do normal initial investigation courses, and we do tracing courses, and we do surveillance courses, and we're the only organisation that does all of that, and really doing very well with it. So, very proud of that. And it's quite a very strict joining procedure now as well. Right. Joining criteria. There's, we weed out the ones that are in that shouldn't be. We've done a bit of weeding of our own, which is good. Getting out the ones we don't want to be in, we don't want to have in, and we're bringing in the new ones that want to join us, but they have to pass quite a stringent joining procedure, and their previous convictions, if they've got any, they've got to declare all those, and how long they've been trading, and what they're doing for what they're doing within that detective agency sort of field, because there's so many, as you may or may not know, there's so many things you can do. So yeah, no, it's really good. I'm very proud to be on it at this very successful time, both financially and serving our people. And one of the things I've just brought to fruition is declaring rogue traders. So if we've got somebody who's either a member of the IPI that's a rogue trader, or somebody who's not a member of the IPI, but we think that they're rogue traders. And I mean, these guys are touting them out to frauds. Some of these fraudsters. Everyone knows there's bad plumbers, there's bad electricians, there's bad builders, but these rogue traders are operating within the private investigation agency, really giving us a bad name, taking people's money and not doing the work. And same thing, I suppose, with, people coming and saying you need your roof replaced, and they're saying they need to do something they don't need to do, and taking the money. And the police aren't interested. You ring them up. The trading standards aren't interested. So we're having a real problem with it, which we're going to approach. But there's a platform now where they can whistle blow and report them to me, and we try and police it best we can.
You see, that's why I set up Ex-Job Services, because Ex-Job Services is a repository former police and military. So, with the great respect to people that have gone from driving a taxi to becoming an investigator, they wouldn't be able to join my thing, because I make sure that I do the due diligence around their backgrounds, why they left. If somebody's on the barring list, we don't accept them. And that's exactly why, because I wanted it to be a repository for nice people. You could join in a heartbeat. Yeah. Absolutely. And I've got a couple of different investigators on there, but I check everybody out, because that is how it works. I can't.
But to be fair, these rogue traders are not members of any of these bodies that we can find out. I've got two live examples at the moment. There's a bloke up in Manchester who we've identified, and he's not in the IPI, he's not in the ABI, he's not in WAPI, he's not in WAD, he's not in any of the organisations, and he's not probably even who he says he is. Do you know what I'm saying? He ultimately is a fraudster and a villain and needs arresting. Yeah, but the old bill won't do anything about it.
But it's fraud by false representation. I mean, that's still a criminal offence under the Fraud Act. And, people lose sight of that. What types of people join the IPI?
Well, we've got a big drive on ex-military. So we take a lot of ex-military, Royal Navy, Army and Air Force. Yeah. They're quite encouraged. They get a discount at the moment to join us, which we're very proud of, to support our armed forces. They've served us. We should help serve them, So that's been a big drive. Obviously a lot of ex-cops, but also people just say, I've been trading for the last 12 years. My dad, trained me, or whatever their background is to getting into being. And don't forget, it's professional investigators, so they can be doing anything. And some of them might just be like the internal investigators at BT or somewhere like that. Do you know what I'm saying? So it isn't just they're running a detective agency, which is what everyone sees us as. It's people doing any investigation work.
Right.
Yeah. So that's an important sort of difference to be made.
And what do you charge per annum for membership?
140, and that got reduced from 175, and we're still ticking over, and we're not for profit, obviously. We're still ticking over, and we've got some money in the coffers to help us if we need to help run courses or support something or give it a discount. People won't have heard of OSINT, but there's OSINT courses that we run, which are very pricey to do, and we get a discount on them. So whatever we get it at the best price for our members, and that's what we're very proud of.
Where do you go to for that?
For the OSINT?
Yeah.
I don't know the name of the chap who does it. I'm really sorry. I can't give you
I went to Dave, I think it's Dave Bentham when I went and did mine.
Right.
Up in Tamworth.
And that name doesn't ring a bell, but I'm not that whizzo on it. I'm certainly no OSINT man, no. But the guy that runs our surveillance courses is a guy called Simon Henson, and he himself runs his own detective agency, but he specialises in running surveillance course up in Derby. It's called Titan. So yeah, we just make sure we get the right experts to do the right thing. We've got an accountant that specialises in what we do. We just bring in the right experts for the right thing, and so our members get that best service. And we're proud of that, and the current board have been very, very proactive.
How many members have you got?
140-ish, 160.
Right.
It's £140 for a membership. I'm about 160 members, but there's also retired members in there as well.
Right.
You can stay retired for a nominal fee. I think it's £15 or something. You can still be a retired member. So we keep all those people on board that are no longer working.
So what does the future look like for you now? I mean, your ailment sort of keeps you restricted in a lot of ways, but your mind is fully flung, isn't it? It's still going well. What does the future look like?
Well, what I've managed to do, I'm very proud of, and it started 15 years ago. I picked up a murder case review, murder being on behalf of the defendant,
right,
who was locked up for life for the murder. He said he hadn't done it. Oh, we all know our judicial system's pretty good, but he said, no, I didn't do it. Could you review it? I said, yeah. So I got the whole file, 10,000 pages of everything, exhibits, you name it, we got it. We got the whole file, read it from top to bottom, went off and did some live inquiries, tried to find, previous witnesses, previous this, previous that, previous the other. And we did a really good job on it. And we also did a very high profile rape appeal as well. And between those, I got a reputation for doing crime reviews of people that are in prison, want to appeal their conviction, and that's what I do. So I can easily sit here and read 5,000, 10,000 pages because I haven't got to use my legs for that. so that's funny how life sometimes gives you, takes away with one and gives you back with another. So I'm hoping to still better carry on doing those for some years. And
do you get paid for doing those reviews?
Oh, crumbs, yeah. I mean, I realise that some defendants haven't got the money, and I've been doing a pro bono one for the last 6 years now.
Really?
A guy called Ben Carr, locked up for a murder, and I believe in his innocence, and it's the first one for a long time that I've had such strong views on, and that would be a podcast in itself, a standalone podcast in itself.
Well, let's do it.
I'd love to get it out there. I'd love to see who's prepared to stand up and be counted on it, because we've got about 7 or 8 new witnesses, and I really think this lad should have an opportunity to put it back to the appeal court and give himself an opportunity to plead his innocence. So yeah, I've been very pleased to be able to get into that sort of rather specialist angle, and it fits in with my ailing body that I don't need quite so many. I've just got to take a tablet with me. I've good old body breaking tablet.
Right.
Yeah, so I really enjoy doing them, and I often read it with a colleague of mine. So you get a bit of a 2-for-1 for us. It's two detectives looking at it, because you know what it's like. You read better with two, don't you, than sitting there for hours on your own. And he'll have more knowledge of one part of it than I will, and vice versa.
Yeah, and it's good to bounce off people as well, isn't it? Sometimes around that.
Gives you that reassurance you're not going the wrong way. We've just committed a historic sex offenders review. Our report was over 11 pages. So, I mean, that doesn't sound much, but when you put it on a screen and you've typed it, if you'd written 11 pages, no 11 pages would be nothing. But when you type out 11 pages, that's a lot of information to show to the client that we've read everything and this is what our thoughts are on your potential appeal.
And how did the CCRC take your information? Are you able to get in front of them, or is that something?
No, we have done, but with this one particular one, the criminal, the sex offenders one, we've only just literally written back to the gentleman, so it'll be for him to look at it and say where he wants to do next. We might do a prison visit. We might, go and try and find some new witnesses, or there'll be the problem is, guys, if you do something historic, and looking at something historic, you've got people that are deceased, you've got people that are unwell, you've got people that don't want to talk to you, you've got people that can't remember. So you really got your backs against the wall when you're trying to do the historic stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's got an uphill climb, but I enjoy reading them and getting stuck into something that I don't. I send the lads out to do the surveillance and all the other stuff, and I can be the fat controller.
Oh dear. Well, look, I've had a really lovely chat. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. But before we conclude this interview, is there anything you'd like to add, alter, or correct in relation to what we've discussed today?
No, I apologise for my failing memory at certain times. You just see if I made a few notes before we set off, but I think I fitted them all in. I'm happy. There'll be something as soon as we put the phone down, as they say. You forgot. Damn, I wish I'd said that. But no, I thoroughly enjoyed your interview and your interview techniques. I'm sure. I hope I didn't admit to something I hadn't done.
No, not at all. Not not online anyway. But
no.
But yeah.
No, look, listen. I don't want my health to be what my health is doing, but you have to face what you got. I mean, every day you read about someone slipping off a plate. You'll know from your police thing, what's the first thing that comes out on all the orders? So and so's died, age 92. So and so's died. So and so's died. So and so's had a brain bleed or whatever.
Yeah.
Super horrible ailment they've got. So we're lucky to still be here and enjoy our lives.
Yeah, make the most of every second that we've got on here, mate, because we never know when it's all going to end.
I am going to say a little thank you at the end here that I've got a wife who you met just briefly before we started this call, and I've got 3 beautiful girls, and they're all adults, and all of them help me. The wife is, unbelievably with her assistance with me and my MS. So it's got to be a big thank you to her. That without her, I probably wouldn't be the man I am.
No, good for you, mate.
You
yeah, absolutely. Well, look, thanks for your time. I'll give you a bell, and hopefully we can do some stuff together in the future.
Look forward to it. You're a gentleman scholar.
Take care, mate. God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you too.
Thanks, mate.
See you when you're older. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.